Today's conversation is sponsored by First Generation Capital Partners. If you're an accredited investor and you want to know about how we're helping other accredited investors keep more of their income, go to firstgencp.com/going long.
You're listening to the Going Long podcast with Billy Keels, the #1 podcast for long-distance real asset investing.
Welcome to the Going Long podcast. We're back once again to continue to help to educate you so you feel much more comfortable as well as confident investing beyond your backyard. And yes, I'm your host, Billy Keels. And guess what? We're back for another solo episode, and we're going to be sharing lots together. I've got another concept that I had on my head and had on my heart that I've got to share with you today. And I want to continue to thank you for continuing to share your screenshots, your tagging us across social media. It's fantastic. Thank you. Keep it up. It's one way that we can continue to get to other new potential members of the Going Long family. So thank you very much for that. Also, for those of you who are continuing to leave your honest written reviews as well as ratings, and if you continue to think about it, we'd love for you to go ahead and do that. Let us know what you like. Let us know what you'd like to have questions answered about, et cetera, et cetera. Go ahead and leave us your honest written reviews as well as ratings. We really appreciate that. And if you want to find out everything or every single episode that we've ever done, you can go to firstgencp.com/podcasts and find out every single podcast that we've ever done. And speaking of which, when we talk about the honest written reviews as well as ratings, I told you that I wanted to make sure that I got back and I shared them with you because we're listened to in over 40 some odd countries at this point in time and tens of thousands of downloads all the time. And today I want to share the honest written review from DSW333, which said, "Must listen. Billy has a unique ability to provide educational information in an entertaining format that will leave you binging the episodes. Great guests and content to truly accelerate your wealth trajectory." Well, thank you very much, DSW333. That was very, very kind of you. So appreciate that. And yes, we always look to make this educational and want to make it entertaining so that you continue to come back. So but listen, I've got something that's also it's really talking about the power of something, another one of these vehicles out there that's going to help you. It's something that has helped me, especially when I started really understanding it. It helped me get to a point where I've made my 9-to-5 optional. Like seriously, it was amazing, especially the last couple of years of my corporate career before I left in my 40s. But listen, here's the thing. It is this concept of depreciation and understanding what the power of depreciation is, and also kind of demystifying this term, because a lot of times I think, especially for those of us have gone through college education, especially right out of school, you start understanding certain things, or when you're in a corporate construct, you understand it in the constructs of the big corporation, but it's like this big nebulous concept. And I want to demystify that because I want to bring it down to Main Street. But before that, I also want to talk about the fact that money is not ever taught in school. You and I both know this. I'm passionate about the fact that it's not taught in school. I don't really understand why. I kind of maybe have I'm getting more and more enlightened as to maybe why that's happening, but I won't go down that rabbit hole because I want to stick to just depreciation. And just the fact of the matter is, what is it? And talk about the power of depreciation. So once again, it's not really taught in schools, but one of the things that I started realizing very much out of school, and also too, because I come from a household where my dad was like, "Hey, listen, you got to sit here and do your numbers. And it wasn't until many years later that I actually realized that the math that I was doing was money, and money is actually math. It doesn't have to be super complicated. You don't need algebra. You don't need calculus, although I did those. You just need addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division is what I'm finding that I'm using most nowadays. But once you realize that money is math and math is money, you then start to realize that there is this very powerful accelerator that no one really talked to me about until college. And when I got into college, we started talking about this thing that was called, depreciation. I applied it in accounting, but I didn't really apply it to my life, this concept, which is absolutely amazing because I started thinking we're doing these accounting concepts. Then I got out into the real world and people talked about depreciation, some of it in the intangible world, which is amortization, but I won't go down that rabbit hole, but just think amortization is the same thing as depreciation for things that are intangible. I come from a software world where you can't actually touch it, feel it, but you apply amortization there, but it's the same kind of thing, more or less. I'm not an accountant. So, and by the way, everything that I'm going to talk to you about, I'm not giving anybody any advice here, tax-wise or other. So the concepts and the examples that I'm going to talk to you about here today take them and talk to your tax advisor, talk to your legal counsel, and find out how this concept of depreciation can apply to your specific situation. So, and also I'm going to use some help because I want to go back to one of my favorite resources, investopedia.com, because I want to understand what do they actually say about depreciation and what is depreciation. Depreciation is simply defined as an accounting method used to allocate the cost of a tangible or physical asset over its useful life. So going back to college, right? When I was applying this, we were applying this to very large pieces of equipment, like a big, huge truck or something that was massively used in the energy sector. And so we're talking about big pieces of equipment that sometimes were millions, if not tens of millions of dollars. And so it always stayed in this very, very large, like, wow, you can depreciate this piece of machinery because the concept is the more that you use the machinery, you're using, as it says, you're using it's being less valuable because it's being used. And so its useful life is less. And so that is one of the ideas. But then I kind of went on to that because I wanted to understand like depreciation. And I remember that we talked about a lot of different types of depreciation, right? And so I want to highlight the fact that this is an accounting methodology. Keep that in mind. It's an accounting methodology. And so a lot of times I would look at depreciation, and most of the times we looked at it and it was a straight line depreciation, meaning that if you had a piece of machinery, it was used over 5 years. If the piece of machinery cost 200,000 or 200 million, right? Every year, that 200 million, you could actually take the life of the value divided by 5. So it was about $40 million a year that you would be able to say that it was worth less. But then the power here was you could actually take those quote unquote losses and apply them to the financial situation of these large, massive corporations. This is what I thought about in college because these were the examples that were presented. And so I also then started understanding that these accounting methodologies, they had some different types of ways to do things, right? You could take it over 5 years, or you could do something that they would call accelerated depreciation, which is doing it over a lesser period of time. And then I started thinking, wow, okay, but it's the same piece of equipment. But once again, this is a methodology. So you have to say how you're going to use it, and then you use it consistently through time, at least as I was thinking about the large corporations. Well, the thing that happened when I started investing in real assets, specifically in real estate, I started hearing about the power of depreciation because these losses that are happening for the useful life of this equipment or this house or this mobile home park or whatever, it's a paper loss, meaning that it's not actually happening. Yes, you're having less use of the piece of equipment or the house because it is being used more and more every single day, but the losses are actually happening on paper. They're not truly real. And so when I started realizing that there was this specific power to depreciation and I could apply it to the investments that I was making, I started thinking, wow, okay, well, instead of thinking about 200 million, let me think about if I were to, being an accredited investor, I started thinking to myself, okay, well, if I applied this to a situation where maybe I invested 200,000, because that was more realistic, 200 million. I don't have $200 million. I don't know if you have $200 million. Maybe you should go to the accounting class or something like that. I don't have $200 million. So here's the thing. As I started applying it to my situation, thinking that I was going to invest in something, if I said, okay, I'm going to place $200,000 into something and I would buy a mobile home park or I would buy small pieces or smaller multifamilies, I started seeing that these losses were actually happening. And I thought, wow, okay, cool. So this is going to be over 27 and a half years, over the commercial, over 39 years. And I started applying the straight line method, right? It's just taking a certain percentage year over year. Well, as I started building my team and started talking to my tax team, the idea was, how can we get more of those paper losses sooner? And so then we started bringing those forward and we would apply on a specific piece of through a cost segregation. Like I started hearing about that. Okay, how do I apply that? This specific unit within a home actually has a usable life which is less. But the fact of the matter is if we use those 200,000 and we compress them instead of over 5 years at 40,000 each year. And I know I'm doing some math, so sorry about this, but it's just to make a point. And once again, take these concepts, talk to your tax advisor, talk to your legal professionals to see how this could apply to you. As I kept investing in real estate, I was not only generating passive income, and I know I talked about that in episode 255. So if you want to hear about the passion that I have around passive income, go check that one out. But I was generating passive income through these investments, and I was also generating passive losses. Well, those passive losses, when I was a high-paid professional, were great, but they were kind of trapped in the asset that I was using because I couldn't actually use them until we sold the asset or some type of event at disposition happened. So there was kind of a love-hate relationship. Like I said, go listen to episode 255. You'll understand that. And so then I started asking different questions saying, okay, well, if you can apply this depreciation concept to this passive stuff, can I also apply it to other things that are active? And it took a while to figure it out, but eventually I started figuring out, okay, well, hang on a second. Applying the same, and I use the same 200,000 example, you have these $200,000 that is being used, and the passive losses were great because they were generating and tax efficient, but I couldn't access the losses. And so even though I was accelerating the depreciation through cost segregation, it wasn't really adding additional benefit because the actual asset, the real estate was only producing the income that it was producing. So as I started finding something that was able to help me also on the active side, because I was a high paid professional, that's where I was earning the majority of my money through the bonus checks, through my payment every month and things like that. And so I started thinking, applying this exact same concept, if I could take this 200,000 and instead of spreading it out over 5 years to get 40,000 each year, if I can use that to also get losses that were against my earned income, right? My active income, then that would allow me to keep that 200,000, maybe apply it to my tax bracket. If it was a 40% tax bracket, it's $80,000. Once again, I'm doing this as an example just to show you the concept. So I could place $200,000 somewhere. I could take that same depreciation, apply it against my active income, and actually keep $80,000 in that specific tax year because I was applying bonus depreciation, bringing that all up front. And I started thinking to myself, this actually makes a lot of sense to me in my specific situation, because if I can keep that money, then I can actually use that money and put it in even more passive types of streams of income. So the reason I am even sharing this with you once is this concept that I thought was only to be able to be applied for very large, massive companies buying pieces of equipment that were 20, 50 million, $100 million. I actually, as a small investor, I started recognizing that myself, I could take these exact same accounting methodology principles and apply it to my specific situation because I was an accredited investor. Even if you're not an accredited investor, you can find investments that are available to you where you can apply these same principles, understanding the different types of income, whether it's passive, whether it's active, and the losses, whether they're active losses, passive losses, et cetera, et cetera. But there's a massive power that I found in depreciation. And so I wanted to share that with you, right? And actually, I've even put together a guide which helps you to understand these kind of two different buckets, to understand the power of depreciation and how it can apply to your specific situation. I know as we're coming to the end of the year, these are things that are really important. And so I would just suggest to you that if you want to find out more, you can do that. Just go to firstgencp.com/going long. You can download the guide there. It's going to talk to you. It's going to talk to you about some of the passive income. It's going to talk to you about active income, and you're going to see the power of depreciation, specifically bonus depreciation, if you want to use that, which is an accelerated type of depreciation. So with that, just once again, if you want to find out more, go to firstgencp.com/going long. While you're downloading the guide, while you're talking about this principle, or even writing your written review, I'll be here preparing for the next solo episode. So until then, go out and make it a great day. And thank you very much. Trust that you enjoyed today's conversation. And once again, today's conversation was sponsored by First Generation Capital Partners. If you're an accredited investor and want to find out more about how we're helping accredited investors to gain their personal freedom even faster, go to firstgencp.com/going long.